great day for history. I am the senior pastor, Reverend Dr. Carson C.J. Holloman Jr., along with my wife, Dr. Chantrese Sims Holloman, who's right over here, First Lady of St. Philip on the Boulevard. We serve this congregation and this community. I also serve on the executive board. This has been all scripted because usually I don't say stuff like this. I also serve on the executive board of Justice Unites Savannah Together. Woohoo! Also simply known as JUST. Somebody shout JUST. JUST is a nonpartisan grassroots community organization coalition of diverse congregations united in pursuing justice and equity all across Savannah, Chatham County, the hostess city, the coastal empire. We are all members of JUST congregations. Please stand. Come on, give yourselves a round of applause. All right. Yeah, thank you for your participation in this afternoon's event and for all that you do to make up the community more just and equitable for all of our neighbors. Now, before Reverend Diane Williams Reverend Dr. Diane Williams introduce our esteemed panel, who honors us today with their time, their stories, and their wisdom, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. Hey there. This afternoon's conversation will last for only 90 minutes. Bathrooms are located downstairs in the fellowship hall for your comfort. If you want to know more about JUST, find someone wearing a JUST pin after the event and we will talk. Now, I turn the leadership over to today's moderator and my colleague and my big mentor sister, the Reverend Dr. Diane Williams. Come on, give her a round of applause as she comes.
Good afternoon. I am Reverend Diane Gregory Williams. I'm a local elder at St. Paul CME Church. I am the co-president and team leader of Justice Unites Savannah Together. This afternoon, we have gathered not just to listen, but to learn, to confront the realities of inequality, and to hear about some pathways toward justice. We are honored to welcome a panel of leaders whose work has shaped and continue to shape the fight for civil rights and justice in Savannah, throughout Georgia, and beyond. Because we have all this living history with us, I'm going to take the privilege of reading their bios. And since we only have one gentleman, we're going to give him special privilege today. Dr. Otis Samuel Johnson is currently serving as the chair of the Racial Equity and Leadership Task Force, appointed in 2020 by Savannah, Georgia's Mayor Van Johnson. Prior to this, he served as a scholar in residence at Savannah State University from February 2012 to May 2019. After serving 2 terms with distinction as the 64th mayor of the great city of Savannah, Georgia, a term limited law prohibited Dr. Johnson from running for a 3rd, 4th-year term. While mayor, Dr. Johnson provided leadership for the creation of Step Up Savannah Incorporated, a poverty-reduced initiative, Healthy Savannah, an initiative that promotes healthy lifestyles, and the Neighborhood Improvement Association, a community developmental corporation. Dr. Johnson has spent a lifetime of public service in Savannah, Georgia. He started his professional career in 1965 as a resource guide with the Anti-Poverty Agency, the Economic Opportunity Authority for Savannah Chatham County Incorporated. He continues his community work as a social planner with the Savannah Model Citizens Program in 1969. Dr. Johnson came to Savannah State University in 1971 to organize the undergraduate program in social work. In 1983, he was elected to the Savannah City Council and re-elected in 1986. He left Savannah State University and resigned from the City Council in 1988 to become the executive director of the Chatham-Savannah Youth Futures Authority. Dr. Johnson returned to Savannah State University in 1998 as Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Social Science. He retired in 2002 to prepare to run for the position of mayor of the city of Savannah. He returned to Savannah State University in 2012 as the Professor Emeritus and was Scholar in Residence until 2019. Dr. Johnson has served on numerous boards, like the Mary Reynolds Babcock Foundation, and on the advisory committee at local, state, and international levels. Dr. Johnson earned academic degrees from an associate degree from Armstrong State University, his bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia, a master's in social work degree from Clark Atlanta University, and his doctorate from Brandeis University Heller School in 1980. That's one of our panelists. Wow. We are also blessed to have Elder Jessie Collier DeLoach. She was one of the forefront of school desegregation in Chatham County, a lifelong educator. Elder DeLoach graduated from Beach High School and attended Georgia State College, where she graduated with a degree in education at the age of 20. Deemed to be too young to teach high schoolers in Savannah, Elder DeLoach moved to Foxton, Georgia, where she taught high school and fell in love with her husband, a Marine Corps veteran, fellow educator, and native Savannian, Robert Fulton DeLoach, Jr. Elder DeLoach received her master's degree in math education, married and moved back to Savannah, where she taught in the classroom and fulfilled other school district roles with distinction for over 30 years. She was among the first wave of Black teachers to move to teach in white high schools. After retiring from teaching, Elder DeLoach became the first African American elected to the Savannah-Chatham County School Board. The board's official meeting room is dedicated in her honor. Elder DeLoach was born and raised in Savannah and lived over her father's business, Collier's Pressing Club, with her parents and 7 siblings. Her father was a college graduate of Georgia Normal College, and education was a firm value throughout her life. Elder DeLoach is a lifetime member of Butler Presbyterian Church, a member congregation of Justice Unites Savannah Together, and raised 3 children with her husband in their home of over 50 years in the Cloverdale neighborhood. That's one of our panelists. Two more to go, y'all. Miss Mercedes Wright Arnold. She is a lifelong civil rights activist. Reformed. Born in Washington, D.C., Mrs. Arnold came to Savannah with her grandmother at age 4, where her life work began. Under the mentorship of Wesley Wallace Law, Ms. Arnold became an active member of the Savannah branch of the NAACP. She directed the boycott of businesses, often called the Broughton Street boycott, that was so successful that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. designated Savannah as the most desegregated city in the South. Based on that success, Ms. Arnold was in high demand nationally. She worked as an assistant field director under Medgar Evers, traveled extensively throughout the states. She directed the National Education Office of the NAACP. She was part of the historic Julian Bond delegation in the 1968 Democratic Convention. She served the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights as the assistant chair for the state of Georgia. All of this work was done as a volunteer. Her humanitarian efforts included service in the Peace Corps in rural Jamaica and supporting and advocating for families whose loved ones had been struck by the AIDS virus. This was very personal work for her, having lost two sons to the virus. Later in life, Ms. Arnold was employed by the U.S. Department of Labor as a civil rights compliance officer, her first paying job. Ms. Arnold raised three wonderful children in Savannah with her late husband, Daniel W. Wright, Jr. Their children, Daniel, Bruce, and Angenique, were among the first students to desegregate the Catholic school at age 5, 6, and 8. Ms. Arnold now splits her time between her homes in Savannah and in Metro Atlanta. That's walking history, y'all. Representative Edna Jackson. Wow. When you know somebody and you've known somebody most of your life, all you can say is wow. Political office, civic leader. She was born and raised in Savannah. She graduated from my rivalry, Alfred E. Beach High School, and went on to earn her her BS degree in sociology and her MD degree in political science education, both from Savannah State University. She says her commitment to public service began at age 9 when she met NAACP leader Wesley Wallace Law. Having joined the NAACP Youth Council as a high school student, Jackson became active while at Savannah State, traveling throughout the South for voter registration drives and sit-in demonstrations. Representative Jackson began her career as a social worker with the Economic Opportunity Authority for Savannah-Chatham County area. She was hired as the director of Savannah State's Emergency School Assistant Program, where she also worked as director of Alumni Affairs and coordinator of the Elder Hostel Program. Representative Jackson then served as an alternate at large on the City Council of Savannah for 3 terms and Mayor Pro Tem of Savannah for 2 terms. In 2012, Jackson became the first African-American woman to be elected as mayor of Savannah, serving for 1 term. Representative Jackson also served as the Southern Region Vice President and National Vice President of Savannah State University. As Vice Chairperson of the Chatham County Democrat Executive Committee, as a member of the Board of Representatives for the World Trade Center in Savannah, and chairperson of Chatham County Hospital Authority prior to her election at the State House of Representatives, where she served 2 terms with distinction. She is also a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, St. Philip's AME Church, a just congregation, the U.S. Selective Board, and the Georgia Advisory Committee for the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. U.S. Congressman John Barrow appointed Jackson to serve on the Military Academy Selective Committee and the Regional Committee of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. Representative Jackson and her husband have 1 son, Kayvon Jackson. Just reading the bios gives you a hint. Now I want you to imagine walking down the streets where the color of your skin determines whether you are welcomed or watched. Mayor Johnson will now take over.
I know you're going to be able to hear me in the back, but should I stand up? All right, I heard that I'm fine, so I'm fine. Right. My name is Otis Johnson, as you've heard. I was born in Savannah in 1942, in the midst of Jim Crow. I grew up on the east side of Savannah, near where the old be on Harmon Street. And y'all so young, y'all don't know all about this. But I'm going to just try to give you the context for this conversation. I went to the Paulson Street School, which was located on Paulson and Joe Street. It was not a school built to be a school, but a school that was transformed from an abandoned shirt factory. If you don't know where that is, if you know where the Hubert Middle School is, that'll help you understand my neighborhood. I went to Kyler, which was on the other side of town. For 7 years, I started at Paulson in 1948. 7 years later, well, let me back up a little bit. I started Paulson in 1948 when I was 6 years old. At that time, all of the books that we had were given to us after the white students at the Ramona Riley School had finished them and gotten new editions. And being a little brash boy, as I always was, and I guess I'm still kind of brash, I asked my teacher, why are we getting all these used books? Why can't we have new books? And I remember the teacher telling me, boy, and you know, that was the common way they addressed it. Boy, you learn what's in these books because 2 plus 2 equal 4 in an old book or a new book. So you learn what's in these books. In the 5th grade, we went on a field trip to the Carnegie Library, which is still located on Henry Street between Price and East Broad. It was a Carnegie grant that allowed us to have a library that we could attend because we couldn't go to what is now the main library on Bull Street. Everything was segregated when we were younger. I had to walk from my home at 823 Rockefeller Street to the Kyler Junior High School. We had junior high school in those days, which went from 8th to 9th. High school was 10 through 12. If you know where the east side is, we had to cross Forsyth Park to get from where we lived to Kyler, which is where the EOA is presently located. Then when I got ready to go to high school, I had to go all the way from the east side to Beach High School, where it is located on Hopkins and 45th Street. There were no yellowway, we called them yellowways. There were no yellowway buses to pick us up from the east side and take us across town. We had to get there the best way we could, or we could buy bus tickets to ride the public transportation from our side of town to the other side of town. One more quick story, and then I will start this discussion because it's not supposed to be a dialogue, a monologue. In 1954, I was in the 6th grade. All of us know that in May of 1954, the Supreme Court of the United States rendered a unanimous decision declaring segregation in schools as unconstitutional. Again, being a little smarty, I felt that in September, and school started for us then after Labor Day. I thought that I would be going to the school where we were getting these secondhand books from, which was located close to me on on Anderson and Waters Avenue. That's where Ramona Riley was. 6 years later, I graduated from the Alfred Eli Beach High School, and there was no desegregation of any schools in Chatham County. 6 years later, 3 years later, in 1963, 19 young people desegregated 2 schools, Savannah High and Groves High. That summer, I went to Armstrong as the first African American. Now we're going to begin discussion of the 1960 movement with 2 people that participated in that movement. And then we will talk about how the school system was finally desegregated and people like Elder DeLoach played a role in that. The NAACP in Savannah was founded in 1917. The original NAACP was created in 1909 by an interracial group that saw the discriminatory practices across the South and really across the nation, and they created the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We just say NAACP. Some people like Mr. Law wouldn't say NAACP, he would say the NAACP. And he would correct us because he didn't like NAACP. But anyway, things began to happen that led to the historic work that began in Savannah in 1960. As I said earlier, the local branch, the Savannah branch, was created in 1917. Because of the lack of membership, the charter was revoked for a while. And then in 1939, a man by the name of Reverend Dr. Ralph Mark Gilbert was brought in to be the pastor of the historic First African Baptist Church. The pastor of that great church is sitting in the audience now, Thurman Tillman. Dr. Gilbert was approached by members of the community about rejuvenating the NAACP in Savannah. So in 1942, a group of people came together to reinvigorate the NAACP. As a part of that work, Dr. Gilbert worked to create the Savannah Branch Youth Council to bring in young people who would be trained in civil rights, in African American history, and in leadership traits. During the time of Dr. Gilbert's presidency of the NAACP, the Youth Council became the largest youth council among NAACP chapters in the country. And so it is no mystery that people like Mrs. Wright and Representative Jackson were a part of the leadership of the youth council that would begin to really assert itself in 1960. In 1960, the young people in North Carolina had started what was considered a sit-in. And y'all know the history of sit-ins, where there were segregated lunch counters. Students, primarily students, would enter those establishments and sit at those lunch counters and request to be served. We know the history of Greensboro, but the history of Savannah can be seen in the Ralph Mark Gilbert Civil Rights Museum, where there is a replica of a lunch counter with people sitting, waiting to be served at that lunch counter. So on March the 16th, and it's an easy date to remember because it was the day before St. Patrick's Day, and y'all know, all of y'all know what happens in Savannah on St. Patrick's Day. All hell breaks loose on March the 17th in Savannah. So in the strategic planning of the first sit-in in Savannah, they chose that day. Students were selected and prepared, and I know that Mrs. Wright and Representative Jackson will talk about the preparation, but they weren't just sent out there to sit in, because it was dangerous. It could be dangerous. Had Savannah been a different place, it could have had a different outcome. But anyway, on that day, people were dispatched to all of the downtown establishments, especially department stores that had lunch counters. And 3 of the young people went to the Azalea Room at the Levy's department store, which is now the library for SCAD. It was a department store. They had a lunch counter. These 3 people were arrested, and the Savannah sit-in movement began. Because of that action and the arrest of others, the NAACP decided that they would boycott the downtown area with the fact that if you can't eat where you spend your money, you can't work as clerks and other people in these stores, they don't deserve our money. I will now turn this over to one of the architects of that economic boycott, starting in 1960 and ending in 1961. It is my honor to pass this mic to, and we used to, we know her as Mercedes. We got educated, sophisticated, and all those other things. So now she's Mercedes. So I'm going to pass this mic to the woman that I grew up knowing as Mercedes. And I know she's going to get me. But anyway, this is Mercedes Wright Arnold, one of the architects of the historic boycott of downtown Savannah, which put Savannah in the history books of the Civil Rights Movement.
to make you just laugh a bit about how I really became involved on a daily basis and with NAACP and with the boycott. But before I do that, I would take a point of personal privilege and remind some of you and tell some who did not know that the original Daniel W. Wright family of Savannah lost its patriarch, Daniel W. Wright, Jr., on March 7th, and he was laid to rest in Atlanta, Georgia. I say that because before telling you anything else about what I was able to do, I have to tell you that I could not have done it had I needed to work to support my family. I did not work out of my home and for my family for money. He did. And it was difficult for a black man, a Negro during that time, to find work. And work that would justify his skills and his talent and his dedication. As a homemaker, I took care of both of the grandmothers of my family and his mother. Hands-on. There were no respite care homes or whatever they are called now for Negroes. We did it ourselves. That was our duty. I dried diapers out of the car window to travel from Savannah to New York so that he could attend New York University, from which he graduated with honors, because he could not attend Georgia State University or whatever the schools were named at that time. He could not attend because of the color of his skin. So we traveled to New York for him to get his degree. He did all of that while taking care of his family. He was the first to desegregate Savannah High School's faculty, where he did not have the respect of the professional educator that he was. And I had to call on the help. And I want you to remember this, all of us in here, that we did not do these things by ourselves, okay? I had to call on a school board member because we had none on the board at that time whose skin was black. I had to call on the dearest friends that we had on the school board at that time, one who was Jewish, and two others who served. I will call the names of Captain Frank Spencer. I will call the names of his wife, if I could remember her first name, but it was Mrs. Spencer. And Gertrude Javits, a Jewish woman who served on the school board, and she picked up, she said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of this." She picked up the phone and she called this person who was a disrespectful person in a position that he should never held, and she says, "I'm calling on behalf of Dan Wright. And if I get one more call from him and his family indicating that you have been less than respectful to him, I will meet you at the school board. With that threat, it ended. But we couldn't do it alone. You understand to me? We had people standing with us. Now, they said, please don't put her up there because she doesn't know when to stop. But, so I'm not going to bore you, but this one is so much younger than me that she forgets how I got into the movement other than my 50 cents membership in NAACP that we handed to Mr. W.W. Law, who would call you everything but a child of God in nice terms if you didn't join NAACP. All right. This one was knee-high to a duck and about this thick. And she had a sister who was 2 or 3 years older than her by the name of Margie. And they spent a great deal, if not most of their time, being reared by their grandmother, Mrs. Sadie Branch, who lived at 609 West Bolton Street. And I lived at 614 with my mother, West Bolton Street. We were a neighborhood then. These two girls thought of me as a big sister because I was 24 years old and had 3 babies, or 2 then. Angie was just, anyway, okay. There were 3 babies. They babysat them, played with them, and they ran from house to house, and it was a neighborhood then. She came to me and said, Merce, we've got to do something. We got to do something. I said, what have we got to do? What's wrong? What's up? It's getting dark, and Margie is not home yet. Mama's gonna kill her. You had to be in your house before dark, all right? Now, you all are too young. You all don't know anything about that. Everybody in here is younger than my 92 and a half years. But this, and I said, well, where is she? She's at a meeting down at the church. And I said, well, what church? Well, I go down on West Broad and Bolton. And she has not come home. It's getting dark. So I said, well, what is the meeting about? I don't know. She won't talk to me. She didn't tell me. Long story short, Margie was one of the first persons in the youth group who heard about the sit-ins in South Carolina, and they wanted to do something about it. Now, Margie did not go, but she helped with the planning. But long story short, I went down to the church to get Margie. Well, I had to go in order to do that because they were still assembled. I got inside and sat down. Mr. Wesley Wallace Law came in shortly and said, oh, am I glad to see you. How are you doing? Oh, yeah, all right, fine. Well, go over there with the, and I said, no, it's all right. Well, the next thing I know, I had the full story, and the young people sat in downtown. The plaque is on the wall at the former Levy's department store, if you ever care to see it. Margie was not one of them, as I said, but nonetheless, she was there. Then, when the young people were arrested, these were our children. You don't send the Negro children to jail and the old folk don't stand up. All right? So we organized, we got money, we got them out of jail, but we said we are going to be accepted for employment in all of these stores just as everybody else who spends their money in these stores. It's accepted. And the battle was on for the desegregation of the stores, for jobs, respect. Every woman who came into that store was called Mrs. Jackson, Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Wright, Anybody whose skin was not right was called Sadie, Mercedes, Sally, Julia, whomever. It was an act of overt disrespect. Now, maybe some of you heard your grandparents talk about this, but we made that a part of our grievance. That boycott went on. Now, I've been called a lot of things and probably going to be called a whole lot more before I leave this world. But somebody said, ooh, Mercedes, I thought she was dead. And somebody else in the group said, oh no, she too mean to die. But nonetheless, let me get back on point and stop being silly. But it's the truth. Anyway, when we went to the meeting to respond to the arrest of the young people, then the organizing started. And first, Hosea Williams, I guess you remember his name. He was the chair of the boycott committee. And Mr. Law says, and Hosea, Mercedes is going to help you. And I said, help him do what? Boy, but let me tell you something. Always be careful what you say and what you do in front of your children. They are picking up on it. We had 2 markets. Savannah did not have a supermarket then. The first one was A&P, and it came years later over on, was it Henry or Anderson? But nonetheless, we had corner stores. There were 2 Jewish stores, one on Bolton Street, where we lived, and the corner of Burris, one on Kyler Street, the next block down, and Bolton. I will tell you about Mr. Meyer Tannenbaum later. I will not name the other one. He was less than respectful to people in our community. And I went in there one day. I had been told not to go in that store. But back then, churches gave the Sunday schoolers little folding, they were not envelopes, but they were gleaners, we called them. And you get little dimes, you ask for money for your Sunday school class or church project or whatever, and you put the little change in. I made the mistake of going in there asking for a contribution, and he was very nasty to me. And ended it by saying, go tell your mammy to give you some money for it. I went back home and I said, I don't know why he didn't like me, but he said, and I told her what she said, if I ever catch you in there again, come on here, come on, let's go down here. She was very outspoken. I went down with her, and when she finished with him, she says, and I'm going to tell everybody else in the neighborhood. I'm going to give them the message that you gave her for me. So I learned from that in her lecture that you never spend your money with someone who is going to insult you, okay? I learned it. I'm not, listen, you don't forget what she tells you now, because if you do, you're in deep trouble. But anyway, so when Mr. Law said that, immediately my childhood flashed back. And I said, okay, well, I'll learn how to do a boycott. And we did it, and it lasted for a year and a half, 18 months. And there was a committee of 100 that was organized, and we had Jewish people on it, and we had Anglo people on it. We had everybody representing Savannah as a part of that committee, and the merchants acquiesced and desegregated their lunch counters. And as time went on, the jobs opened up for our folk. So that's how I got involved. And I learned community organization and what that means. And you don't leave anybody out. Okay, you carry your message and you tell them what it is and why you're doing it and explain it. And let me say something. Savannah State University was Georgia State College for Negroes back then. The students from Georgia State College did a survey. I didn't know how to do any survey, but they did. And they would count the numbers of people who went into the stores, and they would come back and do their math, and when they told us it was this and it was that, and given what we were buying, perhaps what the money was that was being received by they went into detail with it. Your school, Edna. All right. Anyway. That's how we got the list. All right, exactly. All right. So we had dignity. We had self-respect. All right? And people who knew that there were other people breaking the boycott would let us know. And we would let the mass meeting gathering know on Sunday. Every Sunday, for those 18 months, there was a mass meeting held in one of our churches somewhere in this town. That is why I am so glad to hear about JUST, J-U-S-T. I am thrilled and delighted. All right? Our churches are the backbone of our existence in communities. Thank you, Just, so much. Thank you. Now, I'm going to move on because, as I said, I want you all to be alive when I leave this podium. Thank you so much.
Now, oh yeah. Now we're going to hear from someone who is the youngest on this panel, and someone who grew up in the movement, and she loves to say that. So we're going to give her space to tell her story about how she grew up in the movement and how she has continued to be a strong advocate for what is just and what is right. So I introduce you to someone who needs no introduction because you know her, and one of the first things she gonna say is "Hi, y'all." So I'm gonna let her go on and do her thing.
I don't need the mic.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm here? Okay. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm so excited about this. And as I listen to Otis and Mercedes, and we haven't heard over here yet, but it makes me feel great. And the reason I feel, because I grew up right across off of Gwinnett and West Broad on Bolton Street. I was a member of this church. My sister's godmother sat on that pew right there, and Miss Lily G. Mason, who was our Sunday school teacher and all those things, we sat on these 2 rows. You weren't allowed to sit near the back because they knew we were going to talk. But I just wanted to tell you first how I met Wesley Wallace Law. There were times my grandmother would always say that we're going to do something when we get out of school, do your homework and what have you. My sister played the piano. I didn't want to play any piano. And so she said, you're going to do something. So she carried me right across the street to the YMCA. And it was there that I met Wesley Wallace Law. I would see him coming in and having all these kids. I wanted to do the same thing. I told my grandmother. And I had to, my membership dues was $25. And that is how I got started. And one of the things that Mr. Law made sure of was that we knew from whence we came, and that you had to know the history of our people and what we wanted to do. Well, when we started out knowing the history of the NAACP, Fight for Freedom. I think it's Fight for Freedom, Mercedes. That's Fight for Freedom. But you had to know it, and you have to be able to tell others about it, and we had to go to conventions. We had to be young men and young ladies. When we just heard of all the going on in Otis's class, where you had the first people arrested, what happened, we were all at Beach High School, and North Carolina came out, and we weren't going to be left out because we had the biggest youth council. It moved all the way up to 1,000 members of young people. It was during this time, but before we could go any place, you had to know the history. Why are you going? They had to teach us how to dress, but you know, always African-American kids were always dressed. Y'all know it. Mama make the starch dye and the little dresses that she probably got from Goodwill. But we had to learn what we were all about. And it was there at the YMCA that we were told that before you go out, you have to know why and what will happen to you. And I went, when we started getting ready to go, we knew our history. But I had a temper. I would fight. And Sadie Branch, that was my grandmother, said no. But I had to prove myself. If I said it many times to Reverend Tillman, I had to prove myself that I wasn't going to hit anybody. I didn't. So therefore, I was allowed to go and to sit in. Why was it so significant? Because we were young people. We were told what to do, when to do it, and we had to be at First African Baptist Church, given our assignments, what buildings you would go to. My first mission was to walk down Broughton Street on the side and watch the young people as they were going, because we didn't want anybody to get hurt. And we started that every afternoon. Young men had on their little dress shirts. And you know, I don't think, did we have many sneakers back then? The cat ads, what you call them? What are they? Kids. The kids, anyway. But we were, and when we got to the church, we were told, all right, line up.
and you had to be appropriate or you didn't go. Margaret, you remember all this stuff? See, people, this church was real popular. We had a lot of young people. We had to know why we were going, and we made it. We had to see where our people, they carried us down Broughton to make sure that we knew the restrooms, and there were none, very few restrooms. They had a white one for white males and one for white females, and ours was called colored. One faucet. But as we moved forward, we knew why we were going, and there were people like Carolyn Quillen Coleman, the first person arrested down on Broughton Street. We had, one of them didn't show up. Carolyn Tyson. Oh, yes, he was graduating from Savannah State in education, and when he went back home, they would not hire him. We had people like James Brown, who later went on to become the director of the youth program nationally. There are so many of us that went out, but then NAACP wanted us, because we knew what we were doing, to train other people. Now, you know, I like that part, because as a result of the things that we were doing, I was sent to Tampa, Florida, Tampa, with Bob, I can't think of his name. You can tell I'm old. But we went to teach others how to demonstrate. We were always given a list. We knew if you were going to another city, you knew who the attorney would be. You had to have your attorney. You have to have your places where you could live. And thank God for the pastors, because we lived in the homes. We had to know why we were there. I worked in Pahokee and Live Oak, Florida, but I knew our guides as we got there and people that were a part of NAACP. Let me tell you one little story. We had this young man from Jacksonville, Florida, Bob Saunders was the director. Anyway, I forget all these names. But every day we will teach our young people after school where to go, what to do, what not to do. They had to be trained just like we were trained. The one thing, we went to the store called between Jacksonville and what's the school? What's the school, the other black school outside of Jacksonville? Everett Waters. Yeah, we had young people from Everett Waters, but we would go and practice with the young people. And these young men, every day at the Wagon Reel restaurant, they would always come and mess with our young people, and we weren't supposed to hit back. But that was during the time when you practiced. There was this restaurant, and I can tell you, back in that time, I had a temper. Mercedes knows it, because I got more whippings from my grandmama than my sister did. But that was okay, too. But at this restaurant, this team of white students would come and gather around and chastise the kids and all of that, and we got tired of it. But we couldn't go up there and do anything at that time. But they went to the grocery store, and we said, we are not nonviolence now. And they stopped. We had to tell them what was going on. My life, NAACP and Mr. Law and all the neighbors in the neighborhood saw in us things that we did not see in ourselves. And as a result of that, the NAACP decided that they were going to hire young people to teach others, to train them. And Mercedes is not telling all of her story. But that is what we did. My grandmama had to know where I was. Mercedes had to tell her where I was. The pastors knew where we were. And there were so many things that people here protected us. And the little part of the story that Mercedes told about us boycotting, we did. But what she didn't tell is that as we had those meetings on Sundays, and we found out who the people were that were shopping from Fines and Globes and all of those stores. But Mercedes was called the sweetheart of the movement. And her job was to get up there and say, Mr. Lowe, we found out that Miss so-and-so and so had Fines delivering their clothing to the store, to their homes. And we called names, and it stopped the people because we were going to put the names out there. And these were meetings at your church. Bishop, I'm calling you Bishop. Your father played such a wonderful part because we knew all the people in Brunswick that were participating. And it was always, NAACP is the most powerful organization. We are, and I can say so much because as a result of it, they hired me $25, right, Mercedes? I made $25. I dropped out of college, and I worked all over Florida, Live Oak, and then from there, we had to train other people. They put me into the hardest place for me to go was Alabama. And if you know history, you would know that NAACP was put out of the state of Alabama. We fought that one, and we won the case. And as a result of that, Carolyn Quillen and a small group of us moved to Birmingham, and we reorganized the college chapters through all of the classes there. But we met the people. What people don't realize, I can't play it. What people don't realize when you talk about the Montgomery movement, the leaders of the Montgomery movement were the leaders of the NAACP when they put everybody out. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think that, no, it wasn't during those days, but it was those days. And it was a chance for all of the civil rights organizations to get together. And we knew where we were going. I moved to Live Oak, Florida, Pahokee, Florida. Lord have mercy, I don't know where else. But I moved because I knew that I had to go back to college. And my grandmother and my family endured all of it. But it gave us an opportunity to move across the United States because we do not need to forget that NAACP also had a group of Jewish kids that traveled all over the country so that we could teach what we were doing. NAACP, and I know I'm going off on that, but I would not be the person that I am today had it not been for Mr. Law, Curtis V. Cooper, Gene Gadsden. Y'all remember Attorney Gadsden? We would hide in his office. And there were just so many. We fought. Young people now are missing the opportunities of what happened in those days. And we have to carry the mission and teach these things. Now they tell you you're too old. All right, but had it not been that, they wouldn't have made old. Because we took young men, were dressed in those ties, or but they had dress shirts on, and all of those things. That is what we were taught. We went on to we went to Detroit. Mercedes was Medgar Evers' assistant. Mercedes was our executive director assistant. I was put, they couldn't have all the youth people. So I started working. I worked for what's his name? The national president of NAA. Vernon was, yes, we worked with Vernon because they sent us to Atlanta. Vernon was the Georgia field director under the leadership of Ruby Hurley. See, those things come back to you, but our kids don't know what they're all about. And what if someone is not teaching them of what they're all about. But Savannah was unique because the Jewish community worked with us. I got that headache. Yeah. I cannot forget that during those days, we huddled among each other, SCLC, different civil rights group. We didn't try to outdo the other because we had to stay in homes at the preacher house, or we had to stay at the funeral home, all of those places. And someone asked me one time when we moved to Birmingham, weren't you afraid? I don't remember being afraid. But one time when Merce was in in Mississippi, they were sending us into Mississippi, and someone killed a pastor in Mississippi. So they had to put us on an airplane, and it was nighttime. It was dark. That was the only time that I knew that we were afraid. Carolyn Quillen Coleman, people didn't say a lot about her, but in this community, she was known. In this community, we even had young people ready to move, and that's when we started getting the vote out. Anytime Savannah, with the Political Advisory Council, did whatever they had to do, then I want you to know the whole 1st Congressional District took their leadership role directly from us. I'm not going to say very much more. I have a headache, tell you the truth. But we are not. Someone told me I need to write a book. No, I'll do that. But, no, because when you read, I want to write a book, but I don't like to write. But I can tell the story. But you are the ones that can pick up on the information and help to learn the story. I'm going to stop now, but however you got this together, thank you so much, because there are things that need to be told. And as I look at the young people and old people that are in here, let's get together and help tell those stories, because Bolton Street is right over there, and we didn't have a toilet in the house. But we were there, and our families were there. The story has to be told on the city of Savannah. If y'all want to talk about it, I'll talk to you, but I'm not going to write it. But thank you. Excuse me. I got to get some water in me. I know they know why I didn't eat.
We're going to continue to move on, but before we get to Mrs. Deloach, I want to inject something. Had we had a different city government in Savannah, things would not have turned out the way they did. When the city started, we had a mayor by the name of Lee Mingledorff. And Mingledorff said, that we should not be making all this trouble because it was unnecessary. And he had a very different attitude from the man that succeeded him, whose name was, now I'm having a senior moment. No, the mayor. No, before.
Are you speaking of the one that we elected with the voter registration committee's work? If you're talking about
Malcolm McLean. Thank you. Thank you. Malcolm McLean succeeded Mingledorff and had a very different attitude. I believe if Mingledorff had been, if he had continued being mayor, that we may have had a Birmingham situation. Because the police department, the fire department, and all of the means of oppression were under the control of the mayor. But he left to run for county commission chair and was defeated. And that's how Malcolm McLean became the mayor, and he and his city attorney, Jimmy Blackburn, and the city manager, Arthur Mendonza, held the police department in check. And there were very few incidents, although there were a few, of police brutality on the marchers and demonstrators in Savannah. That is something that we need to lift up, and we need to be proud of it, because it certainly could have been different. Also, I want to say that because of the economic pressure that was placed on the merchant class, they had a different attitude, because green rules the day, and when we were herding green, they had a change of heart. And they said, well, if these people come in here and spend money at the lunch counters, it's green. Now, why are we going to get involved in all this racist stuff when all we concerned about is the green? When Easter and when back to school and when Christmas rolled around and the boycott was in high operation, these folk got a change of heart. And you have to understand, green can change hearts. And if hearts change, actions change. So I want you all to just think about that. Now we're going to shift because we're running out of time and we want time for question and answers. But Mrs. DeLoach was among the first teachers that had to go into the formerly white schools to teach because of desegregation. And I'm going to let her tell you some of the experiences she had, and she became a school board member where she had to deal with a whole another level of policy making and implementation. So here is Jessie Collier DeLoach.
Thank you. As a native Savannaian, all of what you've already heard happened after I was almost an adult. I grew up in segregated Savannah. I went to segregated schools. Even the churches were segregated.
Still
And
segregated.
yes. And the first level of desegregation for the Board of Education, for our Chatham Savannah School Board of Education, came at a time when they didn't want to put their little darlings with ours. So the desegregation started with faculties. And those of us who had master's degrees, because I was a teacher at Tompkins High School, I had several colleagues with master's degrees. The decision had been made by the school board, which was not any of us at that time on it, that we would have the faculties desegregated. And those of us with master degrees were sent into the white schools. I was sent to Jenkins High School. I had a master's in mathematics. And there were none of the faculty at Jenkins at that time sent into our schools. Those of us who were sent from the black schools, those vacancies were replaced by students coming fresh out of college. White students were sent into our schools who were inexperienced. They had just come out of college. However, I want to talk about my experience as a teacher. I was sent to Jenkins High School, and I felt that it would be helpful to let the students know how grades were going to be determined. They would be a part of developing what they felt a person getting an A should do. And we would just determine just how the grades would go. So at the first marking period, apparently some of the students did not get as high of grades as they normally got. So the principal at Jenkins was met by some of the parents and wondered, why is my student, my child, not getting what they had before? He said, you can go and see the teacher. Not one parent, I'm not going to say one or two, not one parent came to me. They asked their darlings, why did you get the grade? And they were able to tell them, we got the grade that we earned because we had determined in advance what would be required to get each grade. And I enjoyed my teaching experience. The students were very cooperative because they know they helped determine what was required, and I was going to require what was needed for the course I was teaching. And so I'm just sharing with you that when people are involved and they know that you are treating them fairly, you have a wonderful experience. So I enjoyed my teaching experience. And I also want to mention that there were so many opportunities to just go into the school system. In other words, the program that was called the Emergency Assistance School Program. After being at Jenkins 1 year, I became a part of that program. The board decided that they needed to have a way of helping those faculties that had been desegregated. So I got a chance to go into all the schools, but I must admit that I was an assistant to the supervisor of mathematics that they already had. None of those were changed. They just sent us to assist them. One of us was sent to assist English, one to the social studies, one to the science. So in other words, we became what you might call coordinators, working assistants. And so I went into practically all of the elementary schools because the math supervisor told me, he said, well, he'll continue to go to the high schools. Remember now, all the schools were still segregated. It's just the faculty had been desegregated. So I got an opportunity to help share with teachers in the elementary schools who felt that math was their weakness. They requested that I come in and work with them and demonstrate some of the things that they could do. And I enjoyed my experience, and I was requested to go throughout the county. And I also want to mention that when I talk about the churches also not being desegregated, the students who went to St. Benedict, they came to Beach High after they left 8th grade. They couldn't go to Benedictine. And there were just a lot of things that caused our teachers to be exposed to teaching other students, but our students, still were just in our schools. You've already heard a whole lot about the different things that have occurred, but I just wanted to mention to you that during desegregation of the school system, those persons who were well prepared were moved from the black schools and sent to the white schools.
Let me just this school district did not take the desegregation of the school district in the right way. They fought it tooth and nail for decades in the federal court. And there are several court cases calling on the carpet this school district. And we're talking now about the Board of Education. Things beneath that may have been a little different, but the powers that be did really not want to have full desegregation because they started in the 12th grade. Now, when you get to the 12th grade as a student, you don't want to be going to a different school. You have a loyalty to the school you've been to, and you want to graduate from that school. But they did all of that little stuff to make it unpopular. The thing that broke the back of it was in 1971, a district court ordered school busing because the voluntary desegregation that the local school district was following was not really generating genuine desegregation. And when that order was issued, we saw the emergence of at least a half a dozen private schools emerge in Chatham County, so those little darlings would not have to be bused to the black schools, because the court order said that cross-district busing had to occur in order to get desegregation done. Then you get Calvary Baptist, Bible Baptist, and I name them in my book because I call the names because they did it.
And we're talking about that, I want to say something. not only were the teachers, when I talked about the master teachers, when it came to sending the students, they selected our neighborhoods, which they wanted students from our neighborhoods to go into their schools. None of their students were sent into the black schools. A lot of the black schools closed. But from our neighborhoods, like the Cloverdale community in which I live, and other communities, they selected our students to go into Windsor Forest and those neighborhoods. They decided that, well, if we got to have black students, we're going to select the communities from which they come.
Class status. They went into the middle class black communities and sent those kids to places like Windsor Forest, which was a middle class white school. They never took the middle class kids, white, and sent them to the neighborhood black schools. And I don't want to get into that because y'all are so nice and polite, but you got to tell all of the story.
And we're going to have to
The
find
good,
another time to
The
tell all of
good,
the
bad,
stories.
and the ugly.
I just want to add one little thing with the desegregation of
Go
the
ahead.
schools. That because it was a program that the Savannah State had, the emergency school.
Give her the mic.
Oh my God. Okay, I'll just sit here. The program that you're talking about was called the Emergency School Assistance Program. That's Prince got us all to come back out to Savannah State. And what they did, they matched Tompkins with the one that you were talking about. Jenkins High School. And I don't know where some of the other ones were coming from, but I'm very sure about that one. And Scott Center, they took some of what they considered the best of the schools, and they put them in Beach. That's what they did out in that area as well.
Thank
And
you.
Charles Johnson, but Johnson, remember, I'm Otis. You know, they were going through the presidency and all of that during that time too.
I can attest to that. I was one of the first students to enter into Savannah High School, and I was selected, not willingly, but because of grades and because they approached my mother. I'd like everybody to give this panel another round of applause. We could be here for hours with all of this history. On behalf of Just Members, I thank each of these honorable panelists. They keep looking at me because you know what? She was just a little bit older than me. They would not let me. Miss Mercedes might remember this. They wouldn't let me. My mother was a member, but they wouldn't let me. They said I was too young and I had too much mouth to do a lot of the stuff. But I did get to walk the streets with my mother and the protests. And if you look at the pictures on your program or your sheet, the little girl that's standing with her mother on Broughton Street, that was during the boycott when my mother made me look at stuff that I wanted to buy and tell me why I couldn't buy it. And the reason she brought me was because when I was about 5 years old, my mother and I were in Crest Department Store downtown. And I saw a little girl, and we started waving and kind of talking to each other. And you know how little kids do. And this little Caucasian little girl said all of a sudden, I gotta go to the bathroom. So she grabbed her mom's hand, and mom started walking with her. So of course, I gotta go to the bathroom too, mommy. And I started walking behind them, and all of a sudden, I felt the hand as my mother snatched me up to alert me that I couldn't go there. But I protested that I really have to go. My mother took me down into the basement It smelled. It was dark. There was one little room with a little sink that was filthy and a little toilet. My mother had to hold me up over it to use it, reach in her purse to get tissue because there was none down there, and then take me out. And at that point is when she explained to me why I couldn't go. That is why I'm a part of Justice Unites Savannah Together. That is why I joined the NAACP. That is why I taught my children that an education and a right to vote was more important than anything else in life, and that you should always respect people because you want to be respected. I respect these, my elders today, because of what they did and what they showed me along the way is made me into who I am today. And I am so proud to say that I am a member of a human race that loves everybody but dislikes hatred, dislikes injustice, and stands for justice for everyone, not just someone, but for everyone. I want to thank our beautiful hostess and host here at St. Philip's and all the people that jumped in and brought tables and chairs. Thank you for your hospitality. And to all of you that thought it not robbery to take a few moments of your time to come to hear what it took to get to this point. But I want to remind you of something. Martin Luther King in 1967 warned us that a nation which spends more on military defense than they spend on programs of social uplifting is approaching spiritual death. We refuse spiritual death. I challenge each and every one of you to vote, to pray, to support, to join, to gather, to speak up, to teach, to educate, but most of all, to show love instead of hate. To remember that it takes all of us to make Savannah great. It takes all of us to change what's going on in our world today. One person can't do it alone. They started it, but we're going to finish it. Vote, vote, and vote. Early voting is going on now. The polls were even open today. Please vote. May 19th. Ms. Mercedes, here.
I'm not going to allow them to sneak in here without me saying this, but thank you, Just. You are so needed. You are doing a marvelous work when you bring out the history so that hopefully our young people will know that where they are today did not happen by accident. And they need to know that. Now, you have a long road to hoe, as the old folk used to say. Housing is a dire need in our community. Housing that's open for everyone. Housing was segregated. You lived in certain neighborhoods. In certain neighborhoods, you could only walk through. There are some of us who thought that Tybee was a place you go to work. We didn't know that God had planted the Atlantic Ocean out there. We only learned that after some NAACP students decided to wade in one day. But I want you to know that there is in our presence, I didn't know they were coming, two who snuck in here, one of whom has purchased one of the most beautiful homes in Savannah, in one of most beautiful areas of Savannah that we could only go in to scrub floors and cut grass. Stand up, Sergeant Retired Deborah Michael. Get up. Yes, sir. Retired from the Army, and she lives in a gorgeous home in Grove Point.
All right.
What is it? I'm
Georgetown.
sorry. Whatever. And the other one who snuck in here with her is my daughter, Angelique. Stand up. Who went into St. Who Monsignor John Toomey, who headed the committee that helped desegregate this city, welcomed her into kindergarten. So there they are. You can run, but you can't hide. Not from me.
Thank you all so much again. Tomorrow night at Connections on Skidaway and Durin at 7 o'clock, we will have a debate with the two persons that are running for school board president. 7 o'clock at Connections. I ask all of you that can to please come out. We also have merchandise in the back. Again, see any member that has this button on if you want to know more about JUST. And we do have a housing program going on. We also have literacy going Again, thank you so much. Vote. Make that your mind.
Developed, but in fact, it didn't really benefit me. On Tuesday, we're having a conversation because we have an opportunity with Fairwood for the community to be a part of redeveloping something and a piece of land that has been used by folks like us to give so much to Savannah. And so it's not about Yamacraw Village. It is about historic Yamacraw and how the proposed demolition of that housing project can in fact be an opportunity for us to get involved as a community in developing the thing that we say a community ought to look like. And I'll be happy to share the Zoom link with you.